Here we go, guys. Everybody's been waiting a long time for this. The MSL Hot Stove is cooking and hot, and there's been moves been made, and everyone's wondering what's been going on. So here we are. We have the great Ellie Race, MVP Grossman, two-time MVP Race, and myself here to break down all the different moves that every team has made, expansion teams, and ton of good content that we're here to bring to you guys. So we'll kick it off right away with the, you could call it an expansion team, a split with day three media between Eli Bosch and Uri Shinsky, each bringing their own teams. And Uri Shinsky went ahead and he picked up Zachary Eisenberger, Midfluence, whatever his title is at that in that spot. And
Former writer.
Yes, and he picked up Shimshi Stillman and former third baseman from Moroccan, Shopsky, Ufsitsky. Made some nice moves. Actually like the moves he's made. He's building a team. It looks like he's building a team starting with character guys, which is I think it's a very smart move to make a good vibe in the locker room. And it looks like his team's gonna be off and running. From the other side, with the day three media, which is Eli Bosch's team, he went ahead and he went a different route and he said, let me try to pick up as many superstars as he can. And he went ahead and he picked up guys like Wagner and D. Rose and Yakov Rosenfeld, D. Rose's brother, Yishai Steinmetz.
Whoa.
And I think he's keeping pitcher Ellie Schomburn on the roster. So he's got some pretty, he brought in some top dogs to try to make a run at this thing.
That's a major loss for Consumer. That was their battery.
Yeah. Yishai was a big part of Consumer. It seems like he's moving over to go play with Eli Bosch and D3 Media. It's also a big loss. He's now losing Junior and some others. And it's also a loss for EYG, who's now losing D Rose and Yakov Rosenfeld. And talking about EYG, they lost Stillman, as you mentioned before, Zachary, they lost D Rose, but Yaron Khan is making an MSL comeback for this coming year. So they have picked up a big bat and an outfielder and a good one in Yaron Khan. He bringing a friend
For them.
Yeah. Not that we've heard of. Is this breaking on the MSL podcast? Yeah. I've heard rumors about there is no rumors on this podcast. It's either fact or fiction. Sorry.
Yeah, well,
We're going to have to find out then later. And Ellie wants to get on his Moroccan squad. We've heard of Noam Wainhouse moving over from Vision Vinyl into Effie's Moroccan, which is not Effie's anymore. It's now Nancy Rosen's Moroccan.
Ooh, okay. That could be some breaking news too.
for But that means Noam's going to show up for what? One game? That's how that worked. No.
So that's the catch here.
What I heard,
guys, I think Moroccan has brought in Avi Nenner. Is that true?
that is true. Also, Wainhouse is committed for every single Sunday, supposedly.
Where is Wainhouse going to be playing on Moroccan?
Third base.
Third base. And Moshe Zinn has been acquired as well.
As we agreed to turn.
So this is a whole new left side of the infield for Moroccan. Literally, the question boils down to two questions: is what happens to Moshe David Weissmantle?
It's going to be the majority shortstop, is what I'm hearing out of camp.
He'll be the majority shortstop. When Moshe Zinn is there, then he moves to second base or somewhere else. So here's what I think about Moroccan in general. And I've heard they picked up, not Yoseph. What's his first name? Shmuel? What's his first name? Gestetner? Or they picked up, not Gestetner. What's the pitcher's name? Kaufman.
So you picked up Yossi Kaufman? That's hilarious.
So Yossi,
He's basically taking the HSL and just bringing it into the MSL. This is what Avi Edelman was gloating about on the chat. There's been
so there were,
payment really.
but the funny thing is that with these teams, the question I always have with these teams that are built out of towners, quote unquote, is first of all, is how many times can you get those guys to show up? Now, if they show up and they qualify for the playoffs, what do you run into a roster issue in the playoffs of players who played, let's say, 13, 14, 15 games at positions, and then you have guys like a shortstop like Moshe Zinn who's coming in, and then a pitcher like Kaufman who's coming in, and they're top of the line players, and you're asking guys to either not play or move over, played most of the season in a certain position. Right. So you get into like a sticky roster situation there. And the second thing is
I don't like
Matisse-
Yeah, kind of like Jules by DK.
yeah, we'll get there. But that's one question. The second question is that from a team camaraderie standpoint, you have guys who are playing, guys who are kind of stagnant. If they string together 5 games in a row, then maybe I see it as like some sort of, their, camaraderie. But if the guys are playing 5 games, game 1, game 7, game 10, game 11, and game 18, they come and show up for the playoffs, which was kind of the issue that I saw from RSK last year a little bit. They have a lot of talented players, but they never really played together last season, which was their shortcoming. Obviously, they're one of the most talented stacked rosters in this league. But what happens is that you have players coming from TNEC and out of town, and they never really play together, and you're trying to like piece it together for a playoff run. Sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, I think that was the identity of Consumer here, which led to a championship, was that they had their identity from game 1, and it carried all the way through to the championship. And it ultimately was the difference and the reason they beat up.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. But Consumer seems like I said it at the end of last year when they won the championship. I said the reason why they won the championship is not necessarily because they're the most talented, even though they have a lot of talent. The Rosenbergs are really talented. They have a lot of talent. Flax is obviously a great player, but the point, what I saw from them is that they pretty much had the same guys play every single game throughout the season, straight through the playoffs, which they were the most team out of all the teams. They play together. You come to the field, they're there early before games. They don't have guys rolling in, throwing their cleats on by first pitch. They were like a team, and that's what brought them to the championship. Were they the most talented roster? They'll tell you they weren't their most talented roster. What they'll tell you is that they had the best team. They gelled. It just came together at the right time.
Take it a step further, they didn't have any redundancy in their roster. Every guy on their team had their role and filled their role. There weren't 2 guys going for the same spot. There weren't, any questions about who was the alpha dog on the team. It was pretty clear hierarchy on the team, pretty clearly defined roles, which obviously makes a huge difference.
For sure. That's what I see. So now we can move on to Skyrock, formerly known as Skyrock, now known as Jules by DK.
Another business. I'm loving this because I'm getting all the information for the first time here.
Oh yeah, for all listening there, Yoseph Grossman he came into this not knowing a thing about anything, and this is all genuine library of honor.
I heard nothing. I none of this. I had none of this information.
So with Jules by DK, the I think the headline pickup and talking point is the return of Shraggy Lazarus back to the MSL. I think that's the headliner. There have been other moves made, but the headliner move is the return of Shraggy Lazarus. Now, what does that mean for Shmuel Levenberg is a question. What happens to Shmuel? Shmuel's been pitching for them, for us, for a while. What happens to that? Are they going to share the mound? Who's going to end up playing pitching in the playoffs? Questions that have to be answered. But Shraggy, who was a premier pitcher in this league for a long time, question is how, coming off the couch, what's he going to look like? And the second thing is also, he's not 15 anymore. He's not 16 or 20 anymore. And, does what does still have left in the tank?
Yeah,
that's the headline.
On the one hand, there is no couch for Shraggy Lazarus. The only relationship he has with the couch is lifting it. But at the same time, he was already on the downside, and obviously his downside was better than 90% of the pitchers in the league, 5 years ago when he was on Murat and we won a championship. One thing I would note, though, is that he was pitching with the Rabbi at the time. And the Rabbi was actually more effective than he was. I was playing shortstop behind both of them. And it would be interesting to see if they kind of run it back if you guys run it back with a Shmuel situation where he plays that Rabbi role and Shari kind of brings the heat afterwards, kind of shows a different look.
It could be. That's questions you really have to ask Penny. I think he's obviously the captain. He makes those type of decisions, but I think with Shraggy also is that he brings a bat as well. So he's not just a one-sided player, which is big. There's not a lot, even though there's a lot of great pitchers in the league, there's not a lot of great hitting pitchers in the league. And to have one,
oh man, that's it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So
Yes,
have one, even if,
well, yeah, He isn't in the league yet. He hasn't played.
Right. But I'm saying you have guys who can play both sides, even if he's not the same Schlaggy lad as he was when he was winning Cy Youngs. I don't know if he has or hasn't. I haven't looked that up.
Well, he did.
Yeah. So when he was winning Cy Youngs, even if he's not the same Schlaggy lad as he was in winning Cy Youngs, if he could bring a bat as well, then you bring value that way. Some other moves that Jules by DK has made is they picked up the only back-to-back two-time RSK champion back-to-back is Ari Levine. Now, Ari Levine is coming over from Vision Vinyl. Ari Levine is a super talented player. However, his availability is to be seen. We don't even know if he's going to qualify for the playoffs. We don't know how many games he's going to be able to play. Rumor has he's on the way to Israel. A lot of things going on with Tim Blair, who's a super talented player coming over from Vision Vinyl. The third pickup that Jules by DK has made, which is my favorite, is Mr. Podcast himself, Naki Gordon, son-in-law of Ezzy Katz. Now, the reason why I like this pickup is it's a tremendous depth piece for Jules by DK. Meaning, if you look at Jules by DK's roster, the infield is a lot of out-of-towners or, myself, I'm from Lakewood and Rami Rosenberg. Naki's a player who could play multiple infield positions very well, and he'll be there for 18 out of 18 games or 15 out of 18 games. So it's a piece that, like, in the past years when myself or Remy Rosenberg were missing, we'd bring Yossi in from the outfield, and then we'd go ahead and move. The whole field was moving based on one player missing. Naki kind of brings that stability to everything else that you could plug him and play him wherever.
And Ben isn't going to be calling any big games, so that should work out to his advantage.
Exactly. Another piece that Jules BTK has picked up is a two-time RSK champion, Mike Schlauer. I don't know how much familiarity a lot of people in the league have with him. He's a tremendously talented player moving from Lakewood to Passaic. So the reason why I like this pickup, I'm talking about my own team, is that he's a player. Contrary to Moroccan, that they brought in a lot of out-of-town talented players, this is a player who's going to be available and committed to the league, and this is going to be his league as he's moving to the area and going to be playing. So how often do you have that?
I think what all this does is it kind of makes power rankings pointless because it's really going to be about availability. This season seems like it's going to be the Eli Manning season. The greatest ability is availability.
Yeah, for sure, which is a big key when you're playing this many games and you have a lot of people traveling, is that a lot of times you see at the end of the seasons is that there's teams that are maybe 6 seed that are really top 3 teams because they haven't showed up to games a lot. But we saw last year that it ended up hurting them that their players haven't showed up because they ended up losing early because they have players who haven't played a lot in the league and things of that sort. But having a player who's a talented player moving into the league to be committed to the league is not a pickup that you see a lot. Meaning most of the people around the Muncie area who are, talented, very talented, are probably in the league already. It's very hard to find somebody not in the league that loves softball and wants to play softball that's going to be committed to the league. Now you could go to Brooklyn and Five Towns and Lakewood and other places and try to find players. Those players are ultimately not going to be as committed as a player who lives in the area. So that's why that's I
think the Shraggy pickup is even more important because there's always a learning curve. The field at Eugene is just so big that there's always a learning curve when it comes to newer players. But Shraggy's done it before, and I think that he'll fit in seamlessly. The question mark with these guys is always, I don't know if you remember when Diamondstein joined the league, absolutely dominated his first 3 or 4 starts, and then just got absolutely killed because the field is so big. All the guys had to do was make contact and they were getting hits. So I think that concept is going to be interesting. If you have a guy who's done it before, it makes it a little easier. It makes that transition a little easier.
No, for sure. And I think people have been asking Shraggy to join the league for a while now, and he just hasn't done it. I think he sees this as a good opportunity. A lot of his prior
please. Forward. I mean,
yeah, but I think he sees this as a good situation. He's playing with friends. A lot of those guys are his friends. and he has an opportunity where he had Shmuel there also. It's, it's not all on his shoulders. It's a good opportunity from now. As we know, with Skyrocks and / Jules by DK, they've fallen short for a few years straight now. Meaning they have a lot of players who are very talented, a lot of nice names, as I like to call it, but they've fallen short of expectation year after year after year after year since their 2020 championship. I don't know if they made it out in the first round. Big question marks there. Forgot about to move over East acquisition. He's on the team. Jules by DK himself. Well, I mentioned that we're moving to Jules by DK. That obviously comes with Jules by DK. Right? What would Moroccan be with Neffy? It wouldn't be Moroccan.
They would have won 14-2.
Moving on to Morty's team, MS Motors. I haven't heard a lot of pickups they've made. I've heard them that Wagner has moved. I've heard Pace, for whatever reason, is not joining again. But I haven't heard a lot of moves they've made. Maybe they're keeping under the radar. Maybe there's some players going to come out of the woods that's going to, shock us all. But I haven't heard a lot of moves from them, which is interesting because they were a good team last year and they were one of the higher seeds, if I'm not mistaken. And for them to just sit stagnant is surprising.
Yeah, they were the one that year.
Yeah, so it to me that they would sit stagnant and not really do much.
When you have 48 people on the roster and all of them show up to every game, it's not the craziest thing to kind of fit stagnant to what you have.
Yeah, but when you're losing your pitcher and the key player,
I'm surprised you didn't Schombrun. That would have been a good fit.
Yeah, but it could be that Schombrun. It could be that Schombrun wanted to play with Wagner or whatever it might be, and they're pulling. It could be Schombrun was the pull for them to Schombrun was the pull to get them to Dave. That's possible. I don't know the back end of some of these stories, but there's a lot. I think this year more than other years, there's a lot of movement within the league. A lot of leaving parts.
The new ownership, they allowed movement, and it was previously a lot more restricted. I think it increases interest and it allows the league to balance itself out.
It's a kudos to the commissioners for really balanced movement around controlling it, but allowing it to happen and being just more invested or being in.
Yeah, I think it's a plus and a minus of the commissioners themselves playing the league, right? I mean, there's the plus is obviously if they play in the league, they're much more invested into the league. They're part of it. They want the league to be as good as it can be, not just because they're the commissioners and they want the league to be great, because they're playing in it. They want the fruits of it being great. But at the same time, you could, I'm not suggesting or anything like that of any, but there also there's an automatic bias sometimes. It can seem that way. I haven't had an issue with it. I don't think anybody else has, but it's nature to have some sort of, if you're playing the league, you want to win the league. If you want to win the league, there's always a bias toward that. But I don't think there's been an issue of that, and hopefully it won't be. But moving on to Vision Vinyl. Vision Vinyl, as we know, for the past 2 years has been the nicest way to say it is a train wreck, right? I mean, they've had a loaded roster. They've had players.
Great sponsor,
the best sponsor. Shout out,
the best.
But the team itself has been a train wreck. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. I know obviously Noam's left. Ari Levine is no longer part of the team. There's been I guess there's turnover. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I have heard that Abba Klaba has joined Vision Vinyl, and so has Mr. Lulav himself, Shafi Ackerman. So they are making moves. They are picking up players. I would think it's kind of like rebuild mode for them. I would think. But it seems like they're picking up players who are win now players like Abba and Saka. These guys are good players. So I'm not really sure where that team is, but hopefully they kind of put it together and at least show up for games, right?
They're the classic team right now who's going to spoiler and knock someone out of, a 4-5 matchup and not come into a 3-6 match, They're kind of in that role right now.
Yeah. And we touched on Consumer before, but I think Consumer has bossed Yishai, which I think Yishai was their big glue guy at a certain point in that
he was the
yeah. So I think he was, but listen, you can never count out the champs. They're at the end of the day, the defending champs. You can't count them out. They're a good team. And they picked up Ari Abramowitz. I don't know if you know who he is. I remember he played in fall ball. Good player. And they picked up somebody, Brad Wolf said. I don't know who that is. Maybe you guys know who he is. You know who he is. But maybe he's great. I don't really know who he is. I don't have any insight on him. But I've heard great things.
Facing them is will the league figure missing out. He kind of had everybody training for whole playoffs, and he won. Continues more power.
He was on the last group.
I don't think I faced Nussen a lot. I think every time I play them, it's somebody else pitching. It seems like he had it going, and the whole team had it going. You know, sometimes you just have a team that's just clicking on all cylinders and things are just going right. That was them last year, and if they could find that magic again, almost like the Mets in you know, the MLB, where they just found the spark, they found something going, and they just rewrote it. You know, that's what they kind of did. And you can never count them out. They're the defending champs. Refined Cleaning has now moved to be Cobra Rentals. I think the biggest move for Refine is year 2. That's the biggest move for them.
I agree.
Meaning you never see expansion teams have success. Very rarely see expansion teams have success year 1. Right? We saw with Double R 2 years ago, and then year 2, I think everyone saw they picked up a couple of players and they took a huge step forward. Yeah, they weren't a playoff team, but they took a huge step forward. They were much more respectable. So I think that's the biggest pickup for Refined Cleaning, is that it's year 2. You know, it's not expansion anymore. It's year 2, and I think you'll see them win some games, and then they'll be competitive. Now going into Double R, I think them also year 3. Obviously, they picked up a pitcher who was a good pitcher, right? He's a good pitcher. Dinter. They learned the league over the first 2 years, and I think they're ready to make a run. Now, do I think they're going to be a top team? No, I don't think so yet. But I think they're a destination where people, you know, player who's looking for a new team might want to go there. He'll get a spot, or you know, he'll get what he needs, and I think they're ready to make some sort of playoff push for sure.
And being relatively young is a huge advantage, because that means that they'll have access to the, you know, back from Israel guys, the just moving Muncie guys, will have access to that market.
Yeah. I think that's a big piece when this offseason recruiting process is that a lot of the guys, let's say take MJ, for example, with Shumi and Penny, they're a little bit, we call them older, but they're the older crew of guys that have been in the league for 15, 20 years or whatever it is, 10, 15 years. And they don't really know the high school kids or things like that. It's very hard to stay in touch with it. When you have a team like these younger teams, they kind of have the finger on the pulse of the younger guys. And you'll see some guys who are going to start to shock you and say, oh, that kid can play. This guy can play. Wow. And that's how they end up building teams. Now, moving on to, more of the much more established teams in the league. Obviously, MJ with Shami, the MVP, and, you know, Yoseph Grossman and Naftali Salman. That's a team you can never count out. I haven't heard of major moves. We got moves they made. They picked up Dolby Friedman. Dolby Friedman is a very, very good defensive player. We'd love to see his bat come along. We did see it in fall ball. We saw flashes of his bat. Now, if he could put that bat together, I think it's going to be a massive pickup for MJ. He's a very sure-handed infielder, that we know, and I think it's a good pickup. Now, MJ is a great team. I don't think they have a room for pickups. We have every position.
I don't know if this is breaking news. I'm fairly certain that it's a done deal. But there's a kid from Passaic, Yoseph Groman. Apparently, big bat. He played in the football league, so a couple of guys might know him from there. Big bat, big, strong kid. We'll see.
Infielder, outfielder.
He kind of plays everywhere. Prefers the infield, can play the outfield. Big bat, from what I've heard, and you know, so that'll be an interesting thing. But ultimately, I think this is always the case. Every game that we go into, we go as Al Tannenbaum goes. If Al is hot, nobody's beating us. If Al is not hot, it becomes a lot harder. You know, our issue has always been being one-dimensional. Too many guys are just pull hitters. And, you know, when Al is on, it kind of changes the dynamic completely. So, you know, that'll be, you know, probably our deciding factor.
Yeah, I mean, MJ's been a premier team in the league for a bunch of years now. So you still have players like Grossman and Shumi, and Yitzi Berger's a great player, and you have, arguably the best pitcher in the league on the mound. You have players there that are great, and even as they're aging, they're staying in shape and staying good, and they're a team you could never count out. The other more established team in the league that I think it might even be the last team is RSK, which is Yitz's RSK, which we touched on before. Is their issue is that they have a ton of players who come from out of town. When you have players who come from out of town, you don't necessarily. First of all, a lot of times they end up at a lower seed, playing a tougher matchup in the earlier rounds because they don't show up to regular season games. And then at the same time, you saw it last year in the playoffs where you had guys show up for the playoffs, but they weren't necessarily acclimated to the league. They weren't ready for the league, not necessarily from the talent standpoint, just in general. And they haven't played with their teammates and stuff like that. And you saw them, kind of fall out early. And another thing is that as great as Yitz is, and as great as Yitz has been, he's not getting any younger. So I think that team goes as much talent with Block and Jeremy and all the players they have with Wayne House. They're going to go as far as Yitz takes them. And I think that's ultimately what it boils down to is how much does Yitz have left in the tank? He's still great.
I think also that's going to be their, if they're gonna play it smart, it's going to be less Yitz and more whoever their second pitcher is, whether it's JB or someone else. But let Yitz rest until the playoffs. Let him cheat whatever he has in the tank, so that way for a stretch run he'll be able to pitch. But ultimately, he's a pitcher who pitches to his defense now. And as they introduced the second ball last year. That makes a huge difference in terms of, especially against a guy like you. You're facing a guy like Naphtali Solomon, you're facing fastball, occasional blow up, and that's going to be that. It doesn't matter if it's a new ball, fresh ball, if it's wet outside, it doesn't really matter. You're facing teams. With Yitz, having that fresh ball halfway through the game, you're basically able to hit a slower pitch with a fresher ball on a regular basis, makes it a lot more difficult. And I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the things I saw this past year was that if they had a lead going into the third, fourth inning in previous years, games though, didn't matter. There was no catching. This past year, they blew a couple of leads, and part of the reason why is because that competitiveness was still there because of and you wouldn't think something so small as a fresh ball would make that much of a difference. But when you're facing a pitcher like Yitz with the slower pitch and pinpoint accuracy, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and they did pick up a player. His name is Isaac Front. I don't know who he is, but Fishy is a great player. But again, I think
to put it out there, it's going to be Aaron Judge in
No, I don't know who he is, but again, it's a TNAT guy. Is he going to be committed? Is he going to play? How many games is he going to play? What's his story with that? And
saying Isaac away, so the impact is everything that matters.
I'm sure he is, but as when he's speaking about, he's from out of town, and when people are from out of town, how much are they committed? How much do they end up playing, and what happens most of the time when there's other players? That's pretty much it for the pickups. If there's anything else, so we might have to do like an emergency podcast and make the announcement to the league. But I think Dan Stein has been pretty good with his dropping those tweets. And so he'll do it that way. We can run through quick power rankings, but I think the tone of the way we're talking, we pretty much know we think people stay in the league. You can run through. I can run through a quick thing. You guys can tell me if you agree or not. So for me, my number one on the power rankings, as much as people might not like to hear it, is defending champs, and I think they have to be number one on the rankings just because they are defending champs. The little itself gives them enough to be number one on the rankings. Number two for me is going to be MJ. They're still a premier team in the league. They have Naphtali Solomon, who's we know how good he is on the mound. He's still going to be number two. I think where it gets tricky is right here at number three, because you could go with teams like RSK. They can go with teams like Moroccan, who have a surplus of talent. However, a lot of their teams are from out of town. So I think this is where there's room for debate. I'm still going to go with RSK at three. I still think Yitz is great. I think they have too much talent, even though it comes from out of town. I think it's too much talent to just look away from, and I think I'm going to go with them at number three.
Yeah, I think ultimately those are the three teams where you're like, all right, if they won the championship, you wouldn't be surprised at all.
Correct. Now, at number 4, I think it's to a debate between Jules by DK and Morocco. And again, I think it's just a matter of what you think is better. Having players who are much more consistent or players who are from out of town. So I think going with what I said about RSK, I also think that Morocco has too much talent to just say they're not going to. I think I would. And you want to call it 4 or 4A, then go and pick Jules by DK at 4B/5. But I do think that
I would have it the other way because Moroccan, I would flip it because Moroccan pitching situation is a little too big of a question mark.
Captain's going to really be there. That kind of
The key word is if there. I mean, I don't like the if. I'd rather have, I know for sure that the Jules by DK pitcher is at minimum is Shruggy Lazar. That's a pretty good option. I don't know what the deal is with Moroccan.
100. Also, the reason why I'm putting them behind Moroccan is because of the recent history of Jules by DK is falling short year after year. That's something. Maybe their players are aging. Maybe who were superstars at one point are not superstars anymore, or they're just
maybe they're mid. Maybe they're mid now.
Maybe they're right. Maybe they're mid, and the possibility. And I think after this, I think that's really the top 5 teams in the league. And now it gets to 12. It gets sticky because there's a lot of change, right? You can't. MS Motors last year was the number 1 seed. You can't be 10 in the rankings because at the end of the day, they were the number 1 seed last year. However, they lost their pitcher. They lost Wagner. They lost some key pieces. We don't really know what it's going to look like. You're still going to put them at 6. And they might say, what do you mean? We were the number 1 seed last year. And you're right. But when you lose players, it's hard to know what that's going to look like. I think what is it's a spot. UIG team. They still have a lot of good players on that team. However, losing D Rose is a very, very, very big loss. Getting Aaron back is again with Avi Edelman on the mound. The games he ended up playing last year. I don't think he played that many. And he's busy with other things. God bless him. I think I'm going to have to put them at 7. They're going to hate me for it, but I think also they lost character. Zach Eisenberger, Shimshi Silman, I played with him in football. The guy's energy coming out of his ears, right? When you lose guys like that, as much as you think, oh, okay, well, could we replace him? It's not so easy to replace guys like that, though. For me, he's number 7. They're number 7. For me, number 8 is going to be, it's really a debate between Bosch and Urashinsky's team. Because they're kind of splitting up. So which one do you go with? I think I'm going to go with Bosch at 8. Just because they picked up Wagner. They made moves of, some premier players, as well as keeping the pitcher in Schönbrunn. They kind of got, I don't know how to call it, but they've kind of got like the bigger half of the slice. They got the thing.
They're kind of in that MS Motors situation where they have 3 or 4 recognizable guys. You're like, oh, those guys are good. And I don't know if Uri's team has that.
Right. And then I think right behind them, I'd put Urashinsky's team. Even though typically expansion teams are not, they automatically go on the bottom of the list, but I don't think it's a typical expansion team. I think Urashinsky's been a captain in this league. He was the captain of Day 3 last year. The players he's picking up aren't necessarily new players. It's not so much of a expansion team as others have been. Now, right behind them at 10, I think I'm going to go with Double R. They've made moves, and it would not shock me for them to be. Would not shock me towards the end of the season. Now, I don't think they're ready to make the playoffs. I think they're probably a year or two removed. However, it wouldn't shock me if towards the end of the season they're still in the playoff hunt. They're still trying to. They're playing meaningful games at the end of the season. Number 11 for me would be Refine. Obviously, they had a tough going last year. I do think CP is getting better. However, they're still new. There's still work to be done there, and I think they're number 11. Number 12 is even finished vinyl just because of their recent history and the lack of whatever's been going on.
It's been in the wrong direction. Let's be real. They're trending in the wrong direction.
Friendly, yeah,
You know,
definitely
let's be
trending
real.
in the wrong direction. It seems like they're kind of pushing restart. And when that happens, usually the first year doesn't go well. That would be my 1C12 power rankings.
All right, so we're gonna have to revisit the law. Man, no, oh, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Let's see, bar of course.
Calvin texting me, "Why you think we're stupid?" And and all that. But that's
You know what his Moroccan, what his rollable,
the record one exactly. And what are you talking about? I won 8 championships in my shul league and all that. Anyway,
requisite Avi Ailman hate. Everybody follow and subscribe. We'll do more of
like and subscribe. The link is in the bio.
just